Welcome to the extra long, very precious presentation of Youth Leaders Change Generation Rising Project Roadmap on the example of Emma and Julia Mogus, co-founders of Books with No Bounds. This is a very detailed version, giving you unforgettable memories and impressions of their journey to success and practical demonstration of dozens of small steps of action that you find in our card collection of magic tricks to use to grow any kind of initiative or campaign to massive success. So sit back, get your favorite snack, and watch the video, or use the blank version, adding your own cards as you go along. This is an inspiration for you how to use this in workshops and with groups of young people to get started on project development as part of their initiation to youth leadership. And it is also a very powerful tool to advanced activists and people who want to go real serious, really big. So take some time and enjoy. It all started when Emma and Julia heard about very hard conditions for young children in Aboriginal fly-in communities in their country of Canada. So they began serving 49 fly-in communities, that's communities that have no roads but can only be accessed by airplane, and to serve them with enormous book drives. Why this? Because they had learned that the kids there were 3 to 4 years behind in literacy skills, depression was widespread, the kids had practically no books in their homes, the average number for Aboriginal kids being 1 book per household per life, and that suicide rates had been soaring to up to 30 children at a school of 120. Really bad vibes. And it's all due to a mix of historic injustice, racism, murder, sexual abuse, traumatization, kids for generations being stolen from their families for cultural assimilation, and then just lots of television telling them about dreams that they couldn't achieve, stupid dreams that they couldn't even run after because they're so disconnected from the urban centers. So Emma and Julia, who grew up without cable TV, decided to give them tons and tons of books, good books, Harry Potter collection necessarily included. Because if you have a lot of books, you can dream and you learn a lot about life. Everything from dinosaur books, bone comics, to comics of all sorts, and Harry Potter novels. All these things are really precious for you in your life. So that is why they decided to bring this to their brothers and sisters up north. It all began with a very, very simple book drive, asking kids to donate books that they liked, that were in very good condition, and they didn't need anymore, just as you see a lot of kids doing. And they continued buying books with their own pocket money, baking candy kebabs, selling them as bake sales for book drives, for funds, buying books. And as the news get around of their initiative, the local mall proposed them to use an empty room for storing books and packaging. The pizza chain offered itself as a drop-down station, inviting citizens to bring their books there. So pretty quickly they found caring citizens who supported them at no cost, simply with the infrastructure that they had available. After a while, as books came streaming in, they sat down with the beautiful books, took a great photo representing their initiative and to get their message across, which is serving them very well. You've already seen it on the Youth Leader poster at the start of this presentation. So they started visiting schools, from the little ones to the big ones, the children happy to share books that they loved and that they didn't need anymore. At middle school, you get even more books, and kids are excited to join. They're inspired by the vision, and they generate even more books from their homes and friends. So pretty soon, they got 1,000 books, 2,000 books together. And to get them to the fly-in communities, they had to select an airline. and they selected Vasaya Airlines, which is indigenous owned, and who were so excited to hear of their initiative that they gave them a 90% discount. From the start, Emma and Julia sensed that it's super important to illustrate every single step of their journey. So here you are, the books packaged on board, shared on their super vivid Facebook stream. All the pictures in this presentation are simply downloaded from their Facebook stream over the past 2 or 3 years. And you see how well they serve to share their example. Here, all their followers, the donors, and their friends, everybody sees this venture unfolds and enjoys being part of it. And here we are, the next day, with the success news. The kids are on the local newspaper with the other merrily participating, contributing young people to a good common cause. This makes positive news, and journalists love sharing this. Of course, also Vasaya Airlines in their own company newsletter shared this online and in the printed brochure. Here already with pictures from kids who are receiving an enormous amount of books, making an entire library for their classroom. And the girls always shining. As news got around, a representative of the receiving communities, Grand Chief Stan Beardy, decided to honor their engagement with a personal meeting. And he was super surprised to see that these young activists were not in their 20s, but they were just 13 and 15 years old. And this was the first meeting of many others to follow. Good news in print newspaper. Next week, they were already in Canada AM, the morning television show watched by millions, and the hosts were as delighted as the viewers. The work continued, the stand grew with more pictures, more stories to tell, and as teachers had learned of their initiative, they started using it in schools, asking their students for traits of character displayed by these young changemakers. So the story of these role models helped them talk about values, what moved the kids, what's really important to them, and to see these traits in their peers, not old dead people usually used as role models. And the kids, inspired, seeing that kids age 13 can move a lot of things, started joining in, and easily, because young people at school have strength in numbers, generated more than $1,000 for the cause and shipping to the communities. So Emma and Julia, besides schools, use every way of getting out to the public. It can be a Catholic school district event. It can be book drive contests that they organize themselves with cool prizes for people to win, just to get everybody's attention. So youth soon started to set up their own book drives and sending the collected treasures to Emma and Julia or directly to First Nations communities. They get Girl Scouts involved, who love the initiative and love helping their peers up north, and they are used to group work. Can you imagine the impact if this got around to all Girl Scout groups of the nation? Individual kids like Victoria, who was like 10 or 11 years old, started book drives at their schools. And Victoria generated 1,000 books. If you think about dinosaur books, Harry Potter, each book is easily worth $10. So inspired and equipped with their story, she was able to inspire her school community to donate 1,000 books worth $10,000. And her only wish was to meet her two heroines in person. So Emma and Julia took the train for 5 hours, visited Victoria at her school, celebrated together, and returned with a lot of books. High school teachers enjoy inviting them as speakers to bring social issues to life, to have inspirational speakers that their students can relate to. And students really love it. Look at these guys who, in preparation to the visit, organized a book drive at their school because it's such an easy, instant action opportunity with an impact. And they created a special drop box for the books here from wood, really nice with Native American design. And at high schools, they easily average one book per student, which again can be 500 to 1,000 books in a single morning, worth $5,000 to $10,000. Sometimes their adult supporters, like Councillor Pam Damoff, a local politician, who's also jumping into the frozen lake in winter for fundraisers with them, and Chief Stanberi accompany them. Here at this school, they also created a drop-down box, and yeah, no reason to be too silly, too serious, but good reason to be silly, so everybody has more fun joining in. So all books are super well taken care of. Everything is accounted for. They really feel responsible to do this, to list every book, um, where it came from, where it's going, which community has received what books. They have a very strong sense of responsibility and accountability to the donors who are all joining in with a heart, not just with a few paper pages. So they find that the donors as well as the receiving communities deserve this attention, that everything is done in beauty and well accounted for. So then, of course, have fun. And now that the model is in place, things go more swiftly. And here's the back of the pickup truck of their parents off on the way to the airport. And they always add a note asking the receiving communities to please take photos, how they feel about what they received, to share this with the donors and the community. And everybody is delighted as suddenly their Facebook stream starts exploding with dozens of images of happy kids receiving this, their classrooms swamped in good books for the first time in their life. And many started writing thank you letters. Sometimes, of course, teachers would encourage their students to do so or make it a task. So that could mean 20, 50, 100 letters per day that Emma and Julia received. And some of them they shared on the Facebook stream, delighting their donors seeing this initiative come to life more and more. And they would answer every single letter, sometimes both of them, because they say, see, the kids wrote to us and they would love to have or expect a note back. And since they don't know that we receive hundreds of letters every day, we don't want to disappoint them. So we write to each and every one of them. All this they do with so much love on top of collecting and packaging books every day until 10 at night and through the whole weekend. And they're shining. So pretty soon, TV appearances become normal on the evening news as Hero of the Week and in the nation's prime television program for kids. Radio appearances, and sometimes it means getting up really early in the morning to travel to the studio and be there at 8 o'clock. And they're invited to youth leadership events to speak at women empowerment workshops. And they were wondering, whoa man, what's wrong with adults? We're just 14 years old and they make us trainers of adult women? So they're invited to Rotary clubs, Lions clubs, win awards, get support for shipping, and get connected to other helping hands. And then began the first award season, with their friends Pam and Chief Beardy meeting important figures of Ontario, here with their gloves that were handmade by a Native American grandmother in traditional ways, sharing the stories and always taking beautiful pictures, enriching the pictures with these gifts, enhancing them with a message, and changing worldview about Aboriginal people among their peers and the citizenry of Canada. And when you are noticed as a change maker, of course, you meet your fellow kind. And in Ontario, in Toronto, this means people like Craig, and in this case here, Mark Kielburger, co-founders of Free the Children, Me to We and We Day. and epic speakers like Spencer West. And they also thanked us at Youth Leader by taking our poster with them as a story resource for people so they wouldn't have to use so many words, and for handing it out as flyers for people to take along and spread the message. And as events and awards came showering in, like here for the Peace Medallion, so did they spiral up ever higher to political representatives in the country. And with all these awards, also here in the festive season, the work keeps going, and there's kids contacting them all the time, ready to contribute, who have already packaged books, and they're meeting Emma and Julia for a common picture, for picking up the books and serving their peers up north. So then came the day that Bazaar Airlines sponsored a flight to a community. And for the first time, they would meet the kids and go through their favorite books. And if you ever wondered if a book can change a day in a life, now you know. And would join the kids in the schools they're serving, share their favorite tales and stories, and making friends. So here they meet for the first time after knowing each other from the internet before. And a visit to a First Nations community, of course, means being close to nature and to traditions, and getting involved in preparing dinner, which was more or less their thing. Just as the ceremonies, some of them, of course, nonsense, because Native Americans really like to make fun of city people. But their fabulous mom wouldn't let herself be fooled by Chief Stan Beatty, so at the last moment she noticed that the goose foot caressing ceremony, that was not a real traditional thing. Grandfather fire, present of course, beautiful days and nights, meeting amazing people like this grandma on her monster bike, and Emma getting a ride herself. So adventure up there in the polar circle with their new friends. Real warrior boys and their badass sisters. Yeah, that's snow in the background. And the images speak for themselves. And these times they know what they're working for. Group photos. And shared online, because these new photos, seeing them with the kids in the communities, of course, added to all their supporters and followers' experience, just as it does to you right now. It adds another sense that's really heartwarming. So make sure to take such photos. And now back in the city, they had more stories to tell and more fodder to use in presentations. More good news and fun images, not being so serious or just focused on the facts. So television started discovering an ever bigger story, visiting them in their home. And authors, now also Native American authors, seeing them so close, friends and family with their culture, started donating books by the dozens. So now the kids started getting Native American stories also, which is super precious. And even language books for learning their own language, which they had lost. Publishers start contributing, and when they contribute, books stream in large numbers. Organizations delivering books to kids in need started joining them to now also connect with Native American communities, which they had ignored before. And there's a lot of books coming from that side. In the meantime, Emma and Julia, who'd seen the schools, knew that there is need for more than books. So they started collecting computers. And here these little workbooks for more than $12,000. And they had seen the schools, and now they decided they're going to equip them with complete libraries, adding work materials and teaching tools. adding nationwide contests for larger amounts of money. And they even won a contest that was voted by citizens to be featured in a national cereal commercial. So their message was spreading everywhere. Still, always equipped with the gloves, they were keeping stands going, now in town halls and other places. At the same time, individual donations by kids keep playing a major role and are part of the story. And so books, and ever more books come streaming in. 1.5 years after they started, 71,000 books into the hands of needy kids. Still a lot of work until deep at night, and everything is worth it. And now, as the horizons start growing internationally, it happens that other change makers, like Kekashan from the United Arab Emirates, who's the youngest top-level representative of United Nations Environmental Program, is visiting in Toronto, and since she read about the girls, she contacted them to meet and join the fundraiser on the same weekend. Then Free the Children contacted them to use them as protagonists for their program, helping villages in Africa for holistic development with water, building schools, clinics, and alternative incomes. So they followed the girls who they sponsored the trip to the Free the Children volunteering program from their home all the way to Africa, building schools with other volunteers, getting in real close touch with real phenomenal wildlife, and making wonderful friends and getting really close together for epic moments. So back home, their brother, inspired by their example, heads out to India, also with the Free the Children program, making friends. Meanwhile, the girls extend their help to India, shipping books to India who also speak English. So why not ship over there and to English-speaking countries in Africa, who started contacting them on Facebook asking if they would also help them. So at first, Emma and Julia said, "Oh my God, that's going to be expensive, but the kids need our help." So they started raising even more money to make it possible. And as the great wide world is asking for their support, they still focus on their Aboriginal friends and now adding what they call emergency shipments to kids who, for example, would have had no Christmas presents. And here their mom responded, "We've never seen her this happy. And whatever is happening in the background seems to be a really lively, cool family." Proud Boys, Ninja Turtles, and on the television it looks like an angel is really passing by to bless this moment for this obviously very proud and touched and overwhelmed boy. With First Book Canada, they also started focusing on specific nations and always honoring their supporters with these prepared mini posters for Facebook. They started observing national days to grow awareness for the cause, and also beyond the Aboriginal cause to United Nations days like International Literacy Day and Universal Children's Day. And this scope of activities and message and champions for the rights of children as well as literacy and peace, and standing up for the rights of indigenous children now that they knew about the really bad conditions in the fly-in communities, who, for example, get allocated less money per child than do the privileged normal schools in the city. And if you consider that it's even more expensive to ship things to those schools, you can imagine that they have much less resources available than their peers in the city. And this is also true for food, because there's a grocery chain that's charging 5 to 10 times as much, be it a lettuce or sanitary products, which is a really tough situation if you consider that many of the inhabitants of the flying communities live pretty much at a welfare and poverty level. So they're taking the advocacy to Parliament Hill, sometimes in winter, and keep visiting their friends for return visits, also inviting kids to the city through Versailles Airlines. And with all the serious topics, it's always good to share these moments of cuteness overload to balance the mood. And with all this attention and all this commitment, they got noticed by the World's Children's Prize. And the World's Children's Prize is something like the Nobel Peace Prize for child rights champions. Sometimes it goes to young people, sometimes to adults. And the vote is in the hands of young children, since the World's Children's Prize publishes a magazine that's used in thousands of schools around the planet. So teachers use the examples of child rights heroes and issues to raise awareness for democracy and liberty and economic chances and good education for children, and involve them in voting on the child rights heroes of the year. And Emma and Julia have been World Children's Prize ambassadors, specifically for literacy also, and Emma has been invited in 2 years already to be a master of ceremony at the 3-day event in Sweden. And here she is guiding through the ceremony, the prize giving, and a lot of speeches, dances, music culture, sharing among amazing child activists around the globe, meeting with the patrons of the prize, Queen Sylvia of Sweden and the Prime Minister of Sweden, and of course the people receiving the prize. In this year was Malala, who is also a Nobel Peace Prize laureate, along with Kailash Satyarthi from India, who is the child rights activist who Craig Kielburger, icon of child rights activism, met in the mid-90s when he started on his own quest. So there's Emma again, 2 or 3 years later, on the front page of the Oakville Beaver newspaper, and the next day, once again, with Julia on Canada AM. And what a way of closing the circle, if you imagine how they started not long ago. So Julia back again at We Day, this time not in the Free the Children film, but this time speaking on the stage to 27,000 activist kids, millions watching on TV, broadcast live on MTV. And so students get inspired to join more solidly, founding local chapters with the big Books with No Bounds banner, self-organizing book drives and enjoying every part of it, carrying all the treasures around to send them off to the airport. And here, couldn't spare this one. This is Emma and Julia with Craig Kielburger at the Canadian Living Award. So there's Spencer West again on the right, inspirational Me2We speaker who they'd met 2 years earlier. In the meantime, their supporter Kathleen Wynne, a politician, has become Premier of Ontario. Emma is invited for the celebrations. And she is also invited to a Young Leadership Summit to New York, where she's meeting a lot of other young teenage activists. Some of them you know from our youth leader media, like Lulu and Rachel Parent, and where they're teaming up with mentors on how to evolve their mission. And pretty soon Emma would be again in New York, and this time speaking at the United Nations at the Youth Forum of the Commission for the Status of Women on behalf of the situation of First Nations children in her country of Canada. Which again is another fantastic photo opportunity that would serve her well. Never forgetting, back home, after all the big potato meetings, awards, and oh, what jazz is going on, back to working hands-on. For the kids, it's always the heart and the hands that stay in the center, not getting lost in high-flying ego trips. Their stand keeps growing prettier. The new t-shirts are a rage with their followers, sold as charity shirts. After their brother, also their other younger brother and their sister is joining in now. And their story becomes a shining example to school students around the world. Emma and Julia's vision reaches much further than just Canada, than just literacy and books, but really to empower their global young generation to grow up as changemakers. And that's why they're ardent supporters of Youth Leader from the first day that they heard about our work. And now students can join, scale, replicate, and adapt their model approach in their own province, state, and country all around the planet. For Aboriginal youth and many other groups lacking access to good books, toys, and other. In the Change Generation Rising Leadership Program, in the Take Action Kit, you feel all kind of ways to get involved and to become part of their story as it unfolds, because these two are not stopping. So welcome to the great adventure and of learning from their example how through very, very simple steps you keep spiraling up for ever bigger impact that no one would imagine. Driven by love, passion, tenacity, documentation of what you do, and radiating your love and commitment with a shining smile. And taking all kind of little magic tricks, steps. May you use your wisdom well.